And so I kept going to the races with him and stuff. And just so happened one weekend he said, would you want to race? I said, yeah. So he entered me into a class, and I won the race.
Mm-hmm.
And when my dad came the next day to pick me up at his house, he he said, "Well, your boy brought home the bacon last night." My dad said, "What are you talking about?"
So your dad didn't know anything about
Didn't
it?
didn't have a clue.
Really?
He said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, Josh raced last night and won." And he said, "Well, I didn't know he was racing." And I was just turning red. I thought, "Oh man, I'm in so much trouble." And so my dad on the way home, he said, "Look," he said, "I understand you want to race, and I want you to race, but if you're going to do this, I don't need you going out with somebody else." He said, "We're going to do it together." So at that point, we got the old straight rail Margay go kart off the wall. We called James Buttry and said, "Hey, we need a motor," and that's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then did you race at Shelbyville?
yeah, so at that point, I believe I might have been 13 years old when we got back into it together. And so we actually ran Manchester, we ran Hornwall, um, we ran at Duck River, Thunderhill.
Mm-hmm.
We ran a bunch of dirt tracks. And the thing I didn't like about dirt was all the cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Sunday mornings I was cleaning up. Sometimes we wouldn't get home until 4 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad would say, "If you're going to race, you're going to clean it up." So I wanted to race, so I was going to
Mm-hmm.
work. And so I ended up going to an asphalt track. I was like, I kind of like this. We did good. And Sunday morning, I get to go out there and just kind of wipe on it and love on
Uh-huh.
it. So um, we slowly transitioned over into asphalt, and Twin Fountains was definitely a fun track. But we spent a ton of time out in Dixon at Carroll Ford's track,
Yeah.
Tennessee Raceway, and man, that was a fun track.
Um, so you progressed in after you started running go karts. So how many years did you race go karts? You think altogether?
Altogether, from I'd say from about 13 until maybe I was 19 or 20, and I kind of started to fade out of it. Um, I was driving around and had girlfriends or whatever. Racing was something I really loved, but I just didn't see that I had the money or whatnot to keep going, and so kind of faded away from it. And then I heard that James Buttry was working with Scott Borchetta on the trucks, and
Mm-hmm.
so I would call Penny and ask Penny, what's James doing? Well, he's at the shop at up at Scotty's, and so finally I got in touch with James. I said, "Man, what I want to learn." So he said, "Why don't you come up to the shop and even if you're just wiping down the truck or if you can hand me bolts or wrenches, whatever, come
Mm-hmm.
up here and help." And so that's how I got back into racing again. Was going up there, and Scotty had a Legends car in the back corner, and every night before I go home, I go and sit in it and pretend I was racing. And so that's kind of what got me turned on to the Legends cars was doing that, just
Mm-hmm.
being in the shop with James and talking to Scotty about his career in Legends.
So then you started racing Legends cars at Nashville and Highland Rim or.
Yeah, so I went out to Twin Fountains in Shelbyville, and uh, they had a money race, and so I got my go kart out and went out there to run it, and we ran that race, and when it was over, Willie Allen and Wendell Mobley were out there with a Legends car, and Wendell asked me, he said, "Have you ever driven one of these?" I said, "No, I haven't." He said, "Well, would you like this?" I said, "Absolutely." And so Wendell let me drive the Legends car around, and shoot, that was all she wrote, man. I was in love, and that's when I was at the shop up there at Scotty's, I kept sitting there and pretending I was racing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to get to go race this at some point. And sure enough, down the road, I was able to make a purchase on that car, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what got me started.
So you bought Scotty's car that
I
he had.
did.
Uh-huh.
It still had the '98 WSIX on the
Yeah.
side of it and
Yeah.
everything, and that's
I
how I
remember
ran it.
that car actually.
Yeah,
I remember seeing it race. Yeah.
yeah. So it was pretty cool. So I got to do that and be with James and all of them at the tracks. That was pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool.
And then, so as your life goes on, and how old were you when you got married?
I was later in life because I kept trying to run the trucks and run late models and everything
Mm-hmm.
because I thought maybe there is a chance. There's a chance. A lot of kids make it, and a lot of kids don't make it, and I thought maybe I could. Um, but I met my wife when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I knew I'd marry her. I said, if she's single, I'm going to marry her one day. And so down the road, sure enough, we came back together, and I ended up getting married. I believe I was 30 years old, 29
Mm-hmm.
or 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, how old are you right now?
42. I'll be 43
Uh-huh.
in April. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you ran trucks at Nashville for how long?
I ran that for a season, and then I got to do some testing and stuff for Bobby
Mm-hmm.
Buttry, and really enjoyed that just because I got to be in the seat of something. I loved it, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the coolest part, James would call me and ask if I could come drive for him.
Mm-hmm.
James, he's an icon in every facet of racing, so it's pretty cool whenever he'd call you.
Yeah. Yeah. So after the trucks and as your career goes on, so tell us a little bit now about what you're doing as far as your business goes and helping young drivers. And
Okay, yeah, so that was kind of a play off of something that you had kind of put together in a way for me, and got with James Buttry, and James called me, and I happened to call Tony Mazzo, and things just came together that way. And Tony and Sam came out to the shop one day and looked at the car and sat in it, and they they didn't quite seem as interested as I thought they should. And I thought, well, they don't want to do the Legends cars, and uh, about a week later they called and said, when can we race? And
mm-hmm.
so that's kind of how that happened. And so Sam and Tony kind of got me kicked off, and just kind of mentoring them, and through uh, what James has done for me. And I wrestled, and I got to coach wrestling and stuff. And I just remember as a kid coming up, what my coaches meant to me, and the things that they would do, that they didn't realize.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe one day I'll be able to give this back. And so through that, when Sam came along, my kids didn't love auto racing like I did. Sam did.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of took him in a little bit like my own kid, and was able to help him along. And so with his success, has brought on other people that have been interested. And so
Mm-hmm.
to say that I'm select on what I do, I just don't want to get too big to where, people like Sam, or there's a new kid that came on, Alex Pate. I want to make sure that I give those kids the time and attention they need, undivided if possible. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm doing, just making sure that those kids have got a good experience in racing,
Mm-hmm.
and can be somewhat successful too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I watched the other day, and it's just come into my mind. I watched the David Gravel show. I don't know if you watched that. He's a sprint car driver, and they were asking the team owners, like how much it costs to run a
Mm-hmm.
World Outlaw sprint car a whole year. So, so it cost about anywhere from $2 to $3 million a year. But he said it's not like that this happened that we started last year.
Mm-hmm.
So they already, like his team owner Todd Quiring owns Big Game Dree Stands. He owns Houston Speedway. He owns
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Speedway in Minnesota. So they've been racing for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they built. It's like any other business. It's came up. They didn't have a brand new Featherlight trailer
Yeah.
that cost $700,000 when they started racing. They had
Right.
a pickup truck and a
That's right.
trailer. So they build that inventory. Then just as the years go by, they keep adding to it,
Mm-hmm.
and growing it just like any other business, no
Mm-hmm.
different. So I thought that was interesting, because everybody starts out at the bottom. I
That's
don't
right.
care who you are,
That's right.
and or whatever class you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and you build your way up as time goes on. But but just like your business, I mean, it started out. So now you're helping young drivers come along
Mm-hmm.
and teaching them how to win.
Yep.
And I'm sure I don't mean to put words in your about how to lose, because
That's
you're going to
that's the
lose.
hardest part.
Richard Petty said he won more NASCAR races than anybody, but he said I also lost more than anybody also,
That's right. That's right.
so how to handle that, that I seen a thing the other day too that just kind of hit me. It's talk about us being tested. Like sometimes in life we have things that we feel like, well, this is a test.
Mm-hmm.
This is a test for me to see if I really want to race, or if I how am I going to handle whether it be something physically happen to you or whatever, or financially or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't help but thinking, well, this is a test. But this guy said it's not the test, it's how you handle the failure,
That's it.
because everybody fails, and you may learn more from the failure than you would have from the success of it.
That's right.
And how to teach young people that.
Yeah, I preach that to Sam. I don't want to say quite a bit, but when he has a bad qualifying run or goes out and has a bad race, I always tell him, "Look, I failed my way to where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
didn't, I didn't,
exactly
I didn't
right.
win my way to where I'm at. I
Yeah,
failed my way to where I'm at because I
yeah,
didn't, I didn't want to quit.
uh-huh,
So, just like what you say, how bad do you really want
uh-huh,
it? Going back to the coaching thing, I had a coach, Coach Marley. You'd be tired as wrestling. You'd be tired or hurt, and he would say, "How bad do you want it?" Because you've got to have the want to succeed.
exactly. That's
So,
exactly right. I mean, especially in racing,
yeah,
because there is somebody. I don't care if you race sprint cars at West Memphis, if you race go-karts at Manchester, there's somebody that has more money,
hmm,
that has as good a stuff as you got,
yep,
but they want to bad.
yeah,
And if you're not at that level of wanting to, then there's no way you're going to outrun them.
yeah.
You're just not going to. And
I remember uh, going to a race in Savannah, I believe it was Tennessee, and just what you said, we came in as a go kart race, and we came in the back of a Mazda B 2000 pickup truck with milk crates with our motors and gears and
mm-hmm,
stuff, and there were these stacker haulers coming in, and I'm going, golly. And I told my dad, I said, look at these guys coming in here. He said, that's all right. We're not worried about them. And at the end of the night, we were the ones with our motors tore down, and those haulers were still going out, and we hadn't
yeah,
loaded up yet.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
so it doesn't
yeah,
matter what you show up in because
yeah.
trailers don't win races.
Well, let's thank your sponsors. So, who do you want to thank as far as your sponsorship
Well, so I've
sponsors go?
got some pretty good sponsors that have helped me out and stayed with me. I've got Propel Change Global and Patriot Party News. Missy Chandler's helped me a lot. I've got Kip McCord with Signworks. He does all my graphics and everything, and then FabWorks. They help me out quite a bit with
Mm-hmm,
when I've got some ideas I want to run by them, and
mm-hmm,
like, well, we can put that to work. So,
mm-hmm.
so those are probably the biggest sponsors. So,
Well, folks, if you got a young person and you want to teach them how to race, uh, call Josh here. He'll fix you right up. We want to thank Big Machine Spike Coolers, our sponsors, Anderson Concrete, Cabin Creek Log Homes, and everybody that makes all of our racing possible. And but glad you're tuned in. Hope everything's looking good for this coming week, and hope y'all have a great week. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.